A traveler in north-central Massachusetts takes the wrong fork at the junction of the Aylesbury Pike, just beyond Dean's Corners. He comes upon a lonely and curious country. The ground gets higher, and the briar-bordered stone walls press closer and closer against the ruts of the dusty curving road. The trees of the frequent forest belt seem too large, and the wild weeds, brambles, and grasses attain a luxuriance not often found in settled regions. At the same time, the planted fields appear singularly few and barren, while the sparsely scattered houses wear a surprisingly uniform aspect of age, squalor, and dilapidation. Without knowing why, one hesitates to ask directions from the gnarled, solitary figures spied now and then on crumbling doorsteps or on the sloping, rock-strewn meadows. Those figures are so silent and furtive that one feels somehow confronted by forbidden things, with which it would be better to have nothing to do. When a rise in the road brings the mountains in view above the deep woods, the feeling of strange uneasiness is increased. The summits are too rounded and symmetrical to give a sense of comfort and naturalness, and sometimes the sky silhouettes with a special clearness the queer circles of tall stone pillars with which most of them are crowned. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Carr-Quest of H.P. Lovecraft. Today, we will be going over the epic, the Dunwich Horror. Now, this one's going to be a bit on the shorter side, I promise this time. Well, I really like this story. No shock there. So as to what it's about the village of Dunwich. Specifically, a group of citizens there, or inhabitants, residents there, known as the Whateleys. I've also heard it pronounced Watley. I think I'll say Watley. So it's old Watley, the grandfather, Lavinia Watley, the mother, and Wilbur Watley, the son. Although there's something at the end about something else involving the Watleys. But basically, Lavinia gives birth to Wilbur, and there's clearly something up with Wilbur. There is something very, very odd and strange going on with Wilbur, as the back of this book reads. An evil man's desire to perform an unspeakable ritual leads him in search of the fabled text of the Necronomicon, which I would argue that's actually only part of the story. Because a lot of it describes Wilbur Watley and his relationship to Dunwich and the citizens within it. Now, this is one of Lovecraft's longer stories, and as I go through the rest of the ones in this collection, we are getting into the exceedingly longer ones. So yeah, that'll take me a little bit long. So it might take me a little bit longer to get through the other ones, but we'll get through it. So I think one of the reasons that I really like this story, this is probably, like, the other Lovecraft stories have they have scary ideas and scary concepts and stuff. The Dunwich Horror is the enigma of Amigara Fault of H.P. Lovecraft. And I say that because much like The Enigma of Amigara Fault by Junji Ito, the Dunwich Horror freaked me the hell out. This story freaked me out at times. Partially, mainly through how Lovecraft wrote it, also through Ian Gordon at Horror Babbles, incredible reading of it, but just, this is a creepy story. I think this is a great follow-up. If you read, like, Call of Cthulhu, follow it up with Dunwich Horror. It is a great follow-up because it follows a lot of the same concepts and a lot of the same names of places and people and things like that. So like, Miskatonic University comes back. A lot of characters actually in Miskatonic University are referenced and included as major characters in this book, like Henry Armitage. There's reference to Cthulhu. There's references to Yog-Sothoth, which I think this is one of the main stories Yog-Sothoth appears in. I won't give. I actually really don't want to spoil a lot of this, even though I may inadvertently have through Yog-Sothoth. Well, they mention Yog-Sothoth pretty early in, and the Necronomicon is also referenced and is a major part of this story. There's a bunch of different Lovecraft elements included within this story, and yeah, it freaked me out. There were times where like I would like shudder, and just like this, I'd just be reading it or listening along and just go, oh God, much like the Enigma of Amigara Fault. Yeah, this is a very chilling book. This is a very chilling story, and I think I've pretty much just through going through that list of elements and characters and places. Oh, Arkham's referenced in this too. But through referencing all those, I think we just went through pretty much the entirety of the Lovecraft connections. There were a couple other ones, yeah, I also think this is just a really good read around Halloween, because it references Halloween a lot, like the holiday. It references it a lot, so I think this is a really good story to read around Halloween. What are some other bits of it? Oh, while reading the story, I got a lot of I felt a lot of influences, inadvertent or advertent, while reading it. Specifically how Wilbur Whatley kind of struck me as somewhat, when he was younger, as he is, but not as he. I don't want to spoil, but if you read the story, you know what I'm talking about. Reading a lot about Wilbur Whatley and his relationship to his family and a bunch of stuff like that, it kind of reminded me of the original Village of the Damned. Especially the main kid. I think his name is David. Well, that was the character's name. David, who also played the young boy in The Innocents, which is also a really creepy movie. But so he kind of reminded me of that. Well, Wilbur Whatley reminded me of David from Village of the Damned and the young boy from The Innocents. But as it went on, I actually got a lot of tonal and just sort of descriptive scenes, usually the ones involving dogs. Which, by the way, there's some implied cruelty to dogs in this story, especially when Wilbur interacts with certain ones. So if you're not a fan of that, there's minor references to it, but I just thought I'd let you know. It also kind of reminded me a lot of John Carpenter's The Thing, especially towards the around the middle section, where things really begin to go down, and I also feel a lot of dread. There was a lot of dread going from part to part, because it's like in 10 little bits. But as we approached 1928, when the Dunwich Horror happens, I was just like, oh God, it's getting closer. So yeah, so I think that this is a pretty good story, as you may have gauged. Towards the end, though, I did kind of drift a bit. I drifted a little bit, reading the sort of latter half of it, but I think the ending really wraps it up in a nice little Lovecraftian bow. So yeah, I recommend the Dunwich Horror. I would probably give it on a tier list low S, maybe. If only just because the Dunwich Horror is one of Lovecraft's most well-known stories, next to, I would argue, Call of Cthulhu, but and also one of the later ones that we're going to be approaching towards the end of this month. But anyway, yeah, this has been the Dunwich Horror. Sorry if it seems like I was kind of rushing through it, but honestly, I just really want y'all to go out and read this. You can find it online on the H.P. Lovecraft website that has all his stories on it. Read Call of Cthulhu and especially Dunwich Horror. Read a lot of these, actually. Pretty much all of them are on there. But as for the next tale on our quest, it is another really, really long one, but I'm sure it'll be worth it, because the next story on our list is The Whisperer in Darkness. So thank you once again for tuning in to the Carr-Quest of H.P. Lovecraft. I am your host, Andrew Carr, and next week, people, The Whisperer in Darkness. See ya.